I doubt if there is a city in England that can compare with the general drowsiness and sleepiness of Chichester. Hey, don't knock me, those are not my words. These were the words of Francis Pigou, who became Dean of Chichester in 1888. He said that of his very own city. And in the 17th century, Daniel Defoe, the famed author of Robinson Crusoe, said something along the lines of, if 6 or 7 good families are removed from Chichester, there would not be much conversation. So Mr. Pigou and Mr. Defoe, you've got your views on the city, that is for sure. You've made that loud and clear. But me, Willie Explore, I'm going to put you to the test. I've done some research on Chichester, and let me tell you, it's got some stories. Stories that will make you sit up and listen. Let's go and explore. To show you some perspective, London is over there and Chichester is over there. Yes, everyone. So I'm back in England after my South Africa visit, and I thought I'd make some videos of my local area, which is Sussex. Now I live in Brighton, which is East Sussex, and Chichester is in West Sussex. In fact, it's the only city in West Sussex. I have to say, this is not my first visit to Chichester. I've been here a few times and it holds a lot of special memories for me. My parents visited me here in England in 2018, and my mum, on her 60th birthday, we took her here to Chichester because she wanted to see the iconic cathedral, which we'll see in a second as well. But so I have been here before, but it's the first time I've really dug into the history of a place. This is the first time that I've come here armed with some historical information. So I've read up quite a bit about the place, done quite a bit of research, and I am really excited to show you more. Here is the map, some of the things that we can see, some of the streets. Certainly we'll go to the cathedral. We might go there first. It is a little bit naughty to do that. It's a little bit like having the pudding before the main course, but it is so special that I think we'll do Chichester injustice if we don't start there. And in due course we will visit the market cross and certainly the streets of Chichester, north, south, west and east. You can see the grid pattern. Chichester's got a grid pattern, that's from the Roman times. And certainly we'll visit Priory Park, where there's also quite a bit of history. And it's summer. Look at the beautiful flowers, flower baskets here, hanging next to the pubs and the restaurants. So Chichester has got a lot of history, and it includes having a Roman period, Anglo-Saxon period and a Norman period. We'll talk about that in due course. Novium Margus Reginorum, that is what the Romans called Chichester, and today the locals call it Chai. Sounds very posh. Here's the iconic market cross, which we'll visit in a moment or two. But the beauty of Chichester is that it's a very compact city. It's very easy to explore. It is pedestrianized, although I've been told not everyone likes the state of the pavements. Nonetheless, it's very easy to explore on foot. You don't really need Google Maps. You won't get lost. And I've mentioned to you in previous vlogs that what I like about places is if you see a storybook moment, such as this. Just check that out. A cathedral that is more than 900 years old. Imagine putting this big boy in your Sims build. In the year 681, back in the Anglo-Saxon times, Saint Wilfrid brought Christianity to Sussex, and he set up a cathedral in nearby Selsey. However, due to coastal erosion, the cathedral at Selsey did not have a sustainable future. After the Anglo-Saxons, you had the Normans. The Normans conquered England in 1066, and in the year 1075, the seat of a bishop was transferred from Selsey here to Chichester, and so they built this cathedral. And the cathedral was consecrated in 1108. So more than 900 years of history. Isn't it incredible? And I mentioned the cathedral at Chelsea was moved because of coastal erosion, and apparently this cathedral is not built on the best soil as well, so it had to have some engineering solutions over the years, and certainly it was a lot of work to maintain this cathedral. A fire in 1187 destroyed much of Chichester Cathedral, and much of Chichester in fact, so a substantial rebuild of this cathedral was necessary, and the cathedral got reconsecrated in 1199. So certainly a lot of fires, a lot of natural disasters that also took place. This cathedral has some serious architectural game, don't you think? It's got Norman and Gothic influences. So you've got the Norman architectural style characterized by features such as round arch windows. You've got the thick walls, simple sturdy designs, and then with a Gothic makeover, what do you get? You get things like pointed arches, ribbed vaults, flying buttresses, and of course large stained glass windows. More stained glass than your grandmother's collection of mason jars. The Goths tried to introduce things like greater height, more lightness, and greater intricacy in their structures. And so these large stained glass windows obviously is critical to achieve that. But I've also read that some of these large stained glass windows have actually made this cathedral less stable and more prone to collapsing perhaps. And in general, this cathedral just shows you how technologies have changed over time and how the tastes of the different periods have changed as well. And it's fascinating for me that it still stands today. Oh, and there's more drama about the spire. In 1861 it suddenly collapsed, so obviously they had to fix the spire of a cathedral, and today this is the only spire of an English cathedral that is visible from the sea. So thank you to the Victorians for giving us this beautiful spire that you can see from the English Channel. And Chichester Cathedral is also the only English cathedral that has got a freestanding bell tower like this one, a detached bell tower, a campanile I think is what you call it. So this dates from the 15th century, and this is the bell tower from the other side. The bells on top there, 15th century. They would have been ringing for a long time. Old school notifications, way before social media existed. So Chichester Cathedral, not just a cathedral, but a statement piece. There's no doubt about that. And here in front of the cathedral you also have a statue of Saint Richard, Richard of Chichester. In 1244 he was appointed the Bishop of Chichester. So apparently Saint Richard lived a very clean life, big advocate of a plant-based diet, and he wouldn't touch silverware. So no silver spoons, silver cutlery for him. A man of great discipline. Saint Richard also cared a lot about the poor, and he wanted to reform the clergy in some ways, and obviously had a lot of opposition against it, but he remained steadfast in his faith and principles. So just another shot of him there next to the medieval bell tower. And let's go and explore more of a cathedral. There's a service on at the moment, so we can't go in just yet, but there are some beautiful gardens and obviously other interesting features and architecture for us to observe. And yeah, it's just absolutely wonderful to walk around here. Yeah, more magnificent architecture here. And I've read that this lantern here, you can see there on two sides, it's got the face of Christ. And there was a hurricane in this part of the world in 1987 that destroyed that, so they had to rebuild it. If you remember the hurricane, do let me know in the comments. I know that there were some floods in the 1990s as well, and obviously a fair few fires over the years that have impacted this cathedral. So Chichester, you've had a lot of bad luck over the years, but you've still maintained your glorious edge, that is for sure. Right, let's explore more of this beautiful cathedral and its surroundings, and a secret entrance. Gosh, I love secret entrances. Let's have a look. Yeah, loads of different monuments, different messages. This is quite incredible. And more stained glass windows. So what do you think of Chichester Cathedral? Let me know in the comments. And guys, if you haven't done it yet, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And without your support, I can't keep making these videos. So I don't have a marketing team or a production budget. You really help me out by smashing that like button. Right, let's explore more. So this is St. Richard's Walk. And there's just a tiny bit of drizzle. Nothing to worry about. But I have read that Sussex is one of the sunniest places in the UK. And I know Chichester is not the sunniest. That would be Eastbourne. Eastbourne's the sunniest place in the UK, but apparently you can come to Chichester for more sunshine than you will get in other parts of the UK. There's certainly some magnificent flowers here in Chichester, here in St. Richard's Walk as well. And you get another beautiful shot there of the cathedral. And in front here we've got a building called the Deanery. So is this where the deans of Chichester live? People like Francis Pigou, who didn't have a lot of good things to say about Chichester in that quote. I wonder if he lived here, if this was his posse. Yeah, certainly some magnificent buildings here around the cathedral as well, that is for sure. And not just beautiful buildings, but a beautiful garden, or gardens, Bishop's Palace Gardens. Let's go and check it out. Oh yes. Just listen to the sounds of the birds. There's a little bit of a wind as well. And it says there the Bishop's Palace Garden has been maintained by the District Council since 1974. And look, they even have a vegetable garden. Yeah, lots of different walks. And gosh, I would be able to spend an entire day here just in the garden. So we won't have time to explore everything. But yeah, let's just get a taste for it. And what a wonderful place to come and relax if you're in Chichester. The gardens in England in general are just so magnificent. Right, let's go through here. More walkways. So we got some choices. Do we go left? Do we go straight ahead? Or do we go right? I think let's go straight ahead for now. And the reason being is I want to show you another beautiful shot of a very iconic building here in Chichester. Can you guess which building? Of course you can. It is the Cathedral from the 12th century. Wow, if you are a flower lover, a nature lover, you will almost come to Chichester not for the architecture but for the gardens. Now, I've been living in England for about 17 years. I've been here a long time, but it continues to fascinate me. And one of the things that I always find interesting about England is that it's about the same size as the Free State in South Africa, Yet it's got approximately the same number of people as South Africa. So where do they find the space for gardens like these? Because there are so many people in this country. And in fact, now might be a good time to tell you more about the population of Chichester. The current population of Chichester is about 30,000, or just under 30,000. And I've read that in the 20th century, the population of Chichester has actually increased quite a lot. It nearly doubled. So in 1901 it was around about 12,600, and in 2001 it was roughly 23,700. So not quite doubling, but close enough. And sticking to the church theme here in Chichester, I'll tell you a funny story about the population around the time of the Reformation. So in the 16th century, in 1524, a subsidy roll of a city showed that Chichester had 18 French people, 6 Dutch people, and 1 Scot. So that was what they called cosmopolitan in those days, and a lot of people were concerned about the number of people from abroad or other countries who lived in Chichester. Obviously they had to pay double tax as well, so they were not born here. People who were born here only paid single tax. So that is a funny story about Chichester around the time of the Reformation, and they were concerned about the number of immigrants already back then. And yeah, just more about Chichester in the 16th century. So 1540, I know people were concerned about the state of the city, and it was specifically mentioned in a 1540 Act for the re-edifying of decayed towns. Well, decayed or not, I'm sure that the nature here around Chichester have always been spectacular. Right, let's say goodbye to these beautiful gardens and let's go and explore more of Chichester and see what mysteries, what secrets, what stories it has in store for us. Let's walk down Canon Lane over here and we'll see some more interesting architecture. Yeah, just look at this little door here, 4 Canon Lane, George Bell House. Look at all the materials they've used in the construction around here. They've even got a little splash of colour here in Canon Lane. And yeah, certainly more private properties over here. If you do happen to live in one of these, let me know what it's like. Or if you've been to the deanery, let us know what it is all about. This is Vickers Close, and just check out the beautiful houses here. This one in particular caught my eye because of the way the nature and the architecture have formed a unit. They've come together. More beautiful gardens, trimmed hedges, the sound of birds. Oh gosh, this is just absolutely beautiful. Interesting doors as well, colourful flowers, and let's not forget the only spire of an English cathedral that you can see from the sea. So how wonderful it must be to live around here. Now, do you want to see Cannon Gate, which was erected during the reign of King Richard III? Look no further, because we are right over here. So King Richard III, he ruled England from 1483 to 1485. The most interesting part of Cannon Gate, it must be this little door here. And do you know what's behind it? Well, I don't know what's behind it today, but I do know what it was all about back in the day. So this was actually the door to a court. So this is a narrow door, and apparently there's a narrow flight of stairs up to a room which once held a court. So somewhere up there. The Court of Pie Powder, and it's so named as to the dusty feet of offenders at markets. So people who stole from the market traders or from fairs, they would come here and they would face justice. The Court of Pie Powder. Is there anyone home? Okay, no justice today. Right, I think it's time to have something very English. The Buttery Cafe tea rooms. Let's go and have some tea and scones. And there's the interior. And here are some of the stuff that they obviously sell. You can see the plain scones and the fruit scones. And there's some maple tarts. Yeah, so definitely a bit of a sugar pick-me-up. And just some more of the cafe here. Got some leaflets here as well. Sussex attractions. Festival of Chichester on at the moment, so the cultural scene. And Goodwood Racing, so the Goodwood Racecourse is also in the area here. Colourful dogs. So I've just ordered some cream tea, clotted cream tea here. You can see £7.30. So how English is this? You've got the pot of tea, as you can see there. Very nice and strong. But then you also have water in case the tea is too strong for you. And of course some milk, so we drink milk here with our tea in England. And a cuppa. There we go. If you don't add milk in your tea, let me know why not. Because I know certain countries they definitely don't do it. But absolutely here in England we do. Oh, and there's my scone. And now this is going to be tricky because I don't know what goes on first. Is it the jam? Is it the cream? Certainly people from Devon and Cornwall, I know you'll have something to say about this. Actually, you know what? I know exactly what goes on first. The butter. You know what? I think I found a solution to the old cream tea conundrum. Et voila. So I have a scone here with a jam first and cream second. And I also have one with a cream first and the jam second. So there you go, I found a solution. You can have both. The question is which one is best. So jam first and cream on top. Let's try this. I like the cream on top, makes the jam go down well. So let's give this a shot with a jam on top. So I have a favourite. I definitely have a favourite. And I don't think it's this one. Let's not forget the tea with milk. Feel very English now. Alright, that was very nice. I drank some legal tea, and the reason I say that is that Chichester has actually had a trouble with smuggling in the past, and a lot of the tea that people consumed here in the 1700s was illegally imported. So before it was wool and then it was tea. So a lot of illegal market activity in Chichester back in the day, but also legal trade. And that's no better introduction that I could give to the market cross here. So Chichester has a rich history of being a market town. And the market cross here was put up in 1501 by Bishop Story, Edward Story. And in those days, if you wanted to trade here on one of the streets, if you wanted to have a stand, you needed to pay a toll or a levy. But some people couldn't afford the toll or the levy, so Edward Story put up the market cross here, so you could put up your stand underneath a cross and trade if you could not afford the toll. So if you were poor, you would still have a place under the sun, so to speak. A regular market has certainly been held at Chichester since the 12th century, but it might even have been earlier. And the right to the market was in the hands of a feudal overlord until 1316, when it passed to the corporation, which was a local governing body. And markets were held on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I think that practice still continues today. The Saturday market, that was a bit more of a general event, so local merchants selling a wide range of stuff. But the Wednesday markets, they were a different matter, so they were more specialized. That was primarily livestock animals. And so you can just imagine back in the day, lots of market traders here in the area. A bit like eBay, but in real life. And Chichester also has a fair called the Sloe Fair, which is so named after a sloe tree in the field here near Northgate where the fair took place, and I think it still takes place there every October, the 20th of October. Yeah, just look at all the beautiful detail as well on the cross. Some magnificent carvings and a beautiful clock as well. And the market cross also here stands at the intersection of the four main streets of Chichester. So you've got East Street and South Street here, and then of course you have North Street and West Street in this direction, all stemming from the market cross. Yeah, more of the inside here. So today the cross is very much a focal point of the city and a popular meet-up point as well. So even if you get lost in this very walkable city, very easy city to navigate, but even if you don't find it easy, you can still come here to the market cross. Let's go and explore some of the streets here of Chichester. We're a bit spoiled for choice, but I reckon let's walk down North Street first. I mean, North is probably the most important point on a compass, isn't it? And yes, there are a lot of interesting stuff for us to see here. Chichester Butter Market, the old butter market. And in England, they do have a lot of these blue plaques that commemorate people, and you can see there Chichester's most prominent campaigner for women's suffrage here, Ethel Margaret Madge Turner. She studied here at the Technical Institute and School of Art in the year 1900. So I believe this building was built in the early 1800s, and it's a John Nash design, and it was to provide accommodation for small traders who had previously traded at the market cross. So this bottom story, certainly early 1800s, you can see there 1808. The top story, that was added in 1900, so that was the art school in the Technical Institute. And today the butter market has got a few jewelry shops and a bowls restaurant. So from butter to prosecco. So this is what I love about England in many ways, these old buildings getting modern uses. I think that might be controversial for some because they want to maintain the heritage of places, but certainly here's an example of a church that is sandwiched in between two different shops. The Church of St. Olave. St. Olave, of course, a former king of Norway, and it says here the Saxon church, the oldest occupied building in Chichester, was built around 1050. Yes, some historians claim this is of Saxon origin, but others say that that should be treated with a pinch of salt. In fact, there's no evidence for many that this church has any reference to Saxon architecture, and because it is sandwiched in between two other buildings now, it's very difficult to examine the origins of this building. Anyways, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are here on St. Olave's Church. Apparently the oldest occupied building in all of Chichester, and it's a bookshop in 2024. Oh, there you go, Murray or none. So there is George Murray with Horatio Nelson, and we can read more about their connection here. George Murray from Chichester, born in 1759, rose swiftly through the ranks and served under Admiral Nelson in 1801. Here in North Street you also have an 18th century council chamber. Bit of a tongue twister there, and you can see some beautiful flower baskets here, and the most interesting thing of it is undoubtedly this Roman stone. You can see there some Latin carved in. Okay, yeah, there you can see, obviously it's reflecting. Here you can read more about the stone. Set in the wall near to this notice is the Neptune and Minerva stone. which was dug up at the corner of North Street and Lion Street, so right here in 1723, to Neptune and Minerva, temple for the well-being of a divine house, on the authority of Tiberius Claudius Cogidubnus, great king in Britain. The Guild of Smiths and those therein gave it from their own resources. And I'll tell you more about the Roman history in a bit, but I do think this is very special and great that they've preserved it here. And if you've ever wondered where Lion Street gets its name, there's a lion right on top of the council building here, sitting proudly and looking over Chichester. So let's walk a little bit down Lion Street and see what we can find. Yeah, obviously the election, not far off. You've got the Liberal Democrats, the head office. And in fact, that is a good opportunity to tell you a little bit more about politics here in Chichester. So let's start off with something not controversial at all. The Brexit referendum. And yes, voters were split like a Tinder date gone wrong. Turnout of 77.9%. 51% voted for Brexit, 49% to remain. And historically, Chichester has been a conservative stronghold for a long time. In fact, since 1924, it has had a Conservative MP. So 100 continuous years of Conservative rule. Now that is a very long time. And I've got a very interesting story about the Conservative MP of Chichester around the time of a Boer War. And because I'm South African, it would be remiss of me not to touch on Chichester and the Boer War a little bit. But anyways, obviously many promising young men from Chichester went to South Africa. Some never returned, some did. But one of the first people of Chichester to go to South Africa was Lord Edmund Talbot. So he was the Conservative MP. He was a very big proponent of a Boer War, which obviously was from 1899 to 1902. And he announced his intentions to go to South Africa in 1899. Actually, over the next 3 years, for some reason, there was very little discussion in Chichester about the rights and wrongs of a war. And the Liberals here in Chichester, they actually did not have an outcry about Talbot going to South Africa. Now that makes you wonder, were they actually very happy for him to go and possibly never return? Check this out, the Clock House, St. Martin's Mews, how beautiful. And in fact there was a general election in 1900 called the Khaki election, where the Liberals didn't even offer a candidate at Chichester. So you would have expected maybe the Liberals to have a bit of anti-war feeling, but maybe they were happy for the Conservatives to be at war, so to speak. So there you go, a little bit about the politics and political history of Chichester. And as we've walked down Lion Street, we also arrived at St. Mary's Hospital. And you can see a sign there, the Hospital of the Blessed Virgin Mary, founded 1158 to 1170, removed to this site about 1253. Yeah, I believe St. Mary's Hospital was built as an almshouse. And you can see there reference to almshouses again. And in fact, I speak under correction, but I think this is the only remaining almshouse of this kind in all of Europe. And there is one more thing to see here in Lion Street as we head back to North Street, which is this stone over here. So St. Olaf's Church, which we saw in North Street earlier, there's a boundary stone for the parish. I love these different doors in Chichester as well. You can see Old Bakery House, the Old Grocery. So a little bit of history in this part of Chichester as well. Right, and here on the corner of Crane Street with North Street. Crane Street also a very beautiful little street, mind you. But at the top here, you can see some art. So 36 tiles, you can see there the artist Hudson. And I believe it was Yvonne Hudson, her married name Rusbridge. So 36 glazed tiles of Minerva, goddess of wisdom. And she's wearing a huge statement necklace. Look at that. Check this out. Chichester, not just a historic city, but also a very modern city in terms of gaming and comics. Let's go check out the Pokemon scene. Gosh, if you're a Star Wars fan, this is definitely a place to come. Superman featuring there as well. They certainly got a lot of stuff. There's the Marvel as well. You can see there Harley Quinn, Sonic the Hedgehog and My Little Pony. So Chichester with a bit more of a modern edge, perhaps. Yes, and more stuff here as well. There's the Turtles and the Matrix. And different colours here for all your soldiers. Every colour which you desire. Alright, let's go back from the fantasy world or the modern world to the old world here in North Street. And here I am at the Old Cross pub. You can see people have got football fever, ready for the big matches. And there's an interesting feature here. You can see there's a cross, the year 1928, and 2 random dice, 6 and 5. I don't know what that means, so if you're from Chichester and you know anything about it, let us know in the comments. And also here there's a face of a man, a smiling man. Again, help us out if you know anything about this. It's so funny, sometimes you live in a place and you don't notice things that other people point out to you, so hopefully for some of you at least I've given some interesting information. Alright, here next to D'Artagnan clothing we've got another interesting house. I believe it's called Fernleigh, and this building actually is a fine example of galleting. So you can see the pieces of flint there in between the mortar. This is the Old Man and Company building, and today it is an estate agent. But look at the top there in the corner, that sign there. So that is actually a fire insurance mark. So in the early days of fire protection, that would have been your guarantee. So the fire brigade would be coming to your building, guaranteed to come and help you out. And here you have the Harbour Hotel. I think it was called the Ship Hotel at one stage, and it's a Georgian building, a very nice one actually. And it was built by Admiral George Murray, who fought with Nelson at the Battle of Copenhagen in 1801. And you can see the Union Jack waving proudly. Nelson said, "It must be Murray, no other will do." And I have arrived at Priory Park, an iconic green space here in the city. You can see this park was presented to the citizens of Chichester by His Grace Charles Henry, 7th Duke of Richmond, and Gordon KG. Now that is a mouthful. So Priory Park, lots of things for us of course to see, and I did promise we'll talk a little bit about the history, because you can see the defensive walls built by the Romans, and you can also see remains of a Norman Motte and Bailey castle, and there's a guild hall, formerly the chapel of a Franciscan friary, and a cricket pitch as well. And there you can see, yes, Chichester Cricket Club, founded 1851. And here you go, that is the Franciscan friary. That's another tongue twister. The impressive medieval building standing before you is the only surviving remains of the late 13th century Franciscan friary that once dominated Priory Park. So there's a picture, and here's the real life version. Absolutely beautiful building. And some more dates there. You can see construction around that time in the 13th century. Then, interestingly, the friary was closed under the reign of King Henry VIII. He had some issues with religious houses, didn't like them, so this particular friary was closed under his reign. So yeah, this absolutely, I'd say, dominate the park. And how lovely to see people in the 21st century play some football in front of this 13th century chapel. Isn't that just fantastic? A 13th century building there, and a modern coffee shop. And they also have a bowling green here. How English is this? And there is the clubhouse, Chichester Bowling Club, and they also have a beautiful garden within the park. And here's a statue, but unfortunately the description there is not there it is, the Roman wall here in Chichester, and you can do a Roman wall walk around the city, and I believe the Georgians have restored much of it, but nonetheless still very interesting to look at. So here's a clear separation, so maybe this part restored, this one not. And as we walk here along the Roman walls, built to keep the drama out or to protect the city from invasions, I don't think there's a better spot to tell you more about the Roman history, the Roman period, and certainly a beautiful view here as well of the bowling green and the friary at the back. But yes, so in AD 43, that is the date that is known for the Roman conquest of Britain under Emperor Claudius, and the Romans called Chichester Novium Margus Reginorum. Now that is a mouthful, isn't it? But essentially Novium Margus means new market. It's a bit of Latinized Celtic. New market or new field. You know, they say a picture speaks 1,000 words, so I've got a timeline here for you that's perhaps very useful. You can see there Roman Britain started in 43, AD 43. You had the Anglo-Saxons 410 to 1066, and then you had the Normans arriving in 1066, and you can see there the city wall constructed in the year 300. So there you go, a 300 AD wall over there. After the Romans, who lived here in Novium Margus Reginorum, it was the turn of the Anglo-Saxons, and some Anglo-Saxon chronicles talks of King Aella or Ella, who named Chichester after his son Cissa, Cissa's sister, which became Chichester. Although many historians say that that is just myth, so take it with a pinch of salt. Historians though say that there's no definite evidence or remains of Anglo-Saxon rule here in Chichester. So I did find it very hard to find information about their time here. What I do know, and certainly it's corroborated here on the board, is that Alfred the Great, he did a lot of work in reinforcing Chichester again. Yeah, this board says 890. I've also read some accounts that said that Alfred the Great already started that major upgrade of Chichester in 878, 879, but so roughly around that period. I guess the important part is that it became one of Alfred the Great's fortified towns. Yes, so no definite Saxon remains here in Chichester, but obviously you have the Norman Cathedral over there. It was first a Norman cathedral, and now you also have the remains here of the old Mott and Bailey castle. There you can read it. The mound you see is just a fraction of its original size. It would have been at least 4 times as big, and the Norman lords built highly visible castles across the country, including the Mott and Bailey or mound and ditch structures, and that included timber or stone keeps. So not sure how long that lasted. And there you see the local Lord Roger de Montgomery, who was a French-speaking Norman baron. He was present at the Battle of Hastings, certainly a key ally, a loyalist of William the Conqueror. So apparently Roger de Montgomery, he killed off a lot of English knights who gave William the Conqueror a bit of trouble, and in reward for his services and his loyalty to William, he got a lot of land here in the area, including here in Chichester. And here's an interesting quiz question for you all. If you know the answer, let me know in the comments. So you got 3 helmets here, A, B and C. One of them is a Norman helmet. The answer is on the bottom right of the screen, but I'm gonna be a little bit evil and ask you in the comments to confirm which one do you think is a Norman helmet. Is it A, B or C? Vote now. How about this? 12th century cathedral, 13th century friary, 21st century amusements. Yeah, a walk here along the Roman wall is always special, and it just makes you think how much hard work generations have done before us, the efforts they've gone through to, in this case, protect the city A lot of blood, sweat and tears would have gone into this. But hey, all of us today can also enjoy a bit of cricket. There's a cricket pitch here, cricket field. There you can see the pitch. Not a bad view of a Priory and the cathedral at the back there. Yes, I guess these are the equivalents of a Newlands grass banks where you can come and sit. And next to Priory Park, you've got the Jubilee Gardens. Another green space that you can come and enjoy. So here's the first tree that I want to show you. It is a memorial tree for Queen Elizabeth II, planted in November 22. This one still has a long way to grow, unlike that one over there. Yeah, this tree can spill a lot of gossip about Chichester, that is for sure. It has been around for some time, and you can see there, this tree was planted in commemoration of a diamond jubilee of Queen Victoria, June 1897. Hence the name Jubilee Gardens. But what an iconic piece of flora here. Here's another part of where a walk starts. There's a plaque here saying City Gunpowder Store. So the store and the steps above it were built in 1838 when a break was made in the walls for Priory Road. Burying the store within the city walls ensured the powder barrels were isolated just in case an accidental explosion occurred. The old Gunpowder Store, now decorated with bottle glass. So if you're from London, you move to Chichester but you miss London, just come to Little London for a piece of London here in Chichester. I'll stop saying London so much now. Right, back at the market cross. I thought I was lost, and then I remembered Chichester has a grid pattern and a market cross to help with directions. So let's go and explore another street here. How about West Street? There's the cathedral we saw earlier, and there's a lot of interesting stuff to show you here as well. On the right here you've got the Dolphin and Anchor. It used to be a coaching inn, but it's now a Wetherspoons, and I'll tell you a little bit about transport in Chichester a bit later. But certainly the Dolphin and Anchor at the heart of it. Certainly if you enjoy a pint there, you've got a view of a beautiful cathedral. So this is a pretty deserted department store building by the looks of it. But I do know that this used to be the site of the Oliver Whitby School, the Blue Coat School, so to speak. And you still have a motto there, Vis et Sapientia, which I think is strength and wisdom. That is my best Latin for you. Here you've got the Duke and Rye pub, which I think used to be the Slurping Toad. And you can see there the pub in the church. So this was an old church building which they've converted into a pub, and it's right opposite the cathedral and its bell tower. They say it's the pub in the church and the coolest pub in Chichester. And I read an interesting story about a bit of a crisis in Chichester in 1999 when this pub was granted a Christmas Eve liquor license or drinking license, and obviously some of the people of the town thought that that would compete with the midnight mass that would take place in the cathedral, and there was a big debate in the town. But anyways, the pub maintained its liquor license, its right to sell alcohol that night. Do you want to know what happened? Well, nothing. It was just a pretty civilized evening. The churchgoers and the pub goers did not have an argument that night. All right, further here in West Street, the Prebendal School. Is that how you pronounce it? So it's a boarding school. Beautiful sounds of birds, isn't it? What an introduction for us here to Edes House, formerly known as Wren House. But yes, this building here is a great example of Stuart architecture, the later Stuart period. And John and Hannah Edes, they had the house built, and John, who was a maltster, unfortunately he died before it was ready, in 1696. So there you can see Edes House, a very, very nice building. And I think you got the coat of arms of the Edes there as well. And then interestingly, here at the end you have a pineapple, which was a sign of hospitality back in the day. So there you go, the pineapple. In fact, you have another pineapple there, so two of those. And I also know that this building was used by the West Sussex County Council as its headquarters from 1916 to 1936. And I said it's formerly known as Wren House because many people believe that Sir Christopher Wren designed it, although many people have subsequently dispelled that theory, saying he would have been wholly involved in designing St Paul's Cathedral in London. So it got changed to Edes House. And for all of you interested in the royal family, this is also of course where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, when they visited Chichester, they read the original copy of the US Declaration of Independence here. Yeah, all these buildings just have such magnificent stories. And I have to say that reading up about places before I visit them has really transformed my travel experience. I used to just go blind to places in terms of not knowing anything about it and just seeing what I can find, but I have to say reading up about places and getting a feel for the history of a place really just makes your visit more special. You start noticing things that you wouldn't have otherwise. Right, so we are right here behind Edes House, spire of a cathedral again, and over here we've got the County Hall. The West Sussex County Council County Hall. Another tongue twister there for us, but I've noticed these very interesting metal doors, very, very heavy metal door. And another thing that I've read online was people said I should watch out for the martlets over there, the frieze of martlets in the metal below the ground floor windows. And here is an out sign. I don't know if this refers to the Brexit referendum or not. Next time you open Microsoft Word, pick a font and pick Gill Sans. So the reason I say that is Eric Gill, who created that font, he lived here somewhere close by. I don't exactly know where. I think there might have been a blue plaque, there might still be one, but he was also a bit of a controversial figure, so I don't know if they removed it or not. So Gill Sans, an iconic font in Microsoft Word with its Chichester connection. There are some absolutely beautiful houses and cottages here in Chichester, there's no doubt about it. Did you know that Chichester has one of the highest rates of unoccupied homes in England? A study was done in 2020 which showed that approximately 1 in 17 houses are vacant. And I've got some specific statistics here from that study. 3,444 houses were vacant in Chichester, of which 3,302 were second homes. Chichester, the city where even homes can take a holiday. Novio Margus Reginorum again, the former name of Chichester in Roman times. And we are here at the site of the old West Gate. And you can see there, 1,800 years ago, the Romans built a wall with 4 gateways. And this is the site of a West Gate, which stood here until 1773. So all the gates, they've been done away with, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And let's walk back to the Dolphin and Anchor and I'll tell you an interesting story about just that. In the 1700s, it became clear that Chichester needed better transport links with the rest of the country, especially London. because long distance travellers, they still had to travel over the old Roman roads. Each parish, they were responsible for maintaining their bit of a road, and because of that, the difference in quality could vary quite a bit. And in some parts, I understand, roads from Chichester to Portsmouth, Brighton and London were practically impassable. One of the solutions was for turnpike trusts to collect levies for the maintenance of roads in the area, and it worked to some extent, because now from the Dolphin in the 1760s you could take transport to London in under 10 hours. Thank you very much, mate. Yes, so you have a Dolphin Hotel. If you wanted to travel to London in the 1760s, you needed to come here to the Dolphin in West Street. If you wanted to go to Portsmouth, you needed to go to the Swan in East Street. In a bit of a video killed the radio star moment, because there was more movement here in Chichester, more people travelling to London and to Portsmouth. You created large bottlenecks at the medieval city gates, and so 3 of the gates, the north, west and south, were demolished in 1773, and the east gate got demolished in 1783, so 10 years later. But that was, I guess, Chichester's video killed the radio star moment. Sometimes to make an omelette, you need to break an egg. Here is Providence Chapel, and I've just noticed an interesting sign over there to the memory of Thomas Iveson and Richard Hooke, who were martyred at Chichester 1555 for their faith.
They were actually martyred on the site where the church was built.
Incredible. Oh, it makes you think just how many people have suffered, over the years.
Oh, there's been. I mean, I know there was a lot more that were martyred after him, but they were one of the first in this area.
Yes, yeah, certainly very well known.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So they've just opened up here for me. Beautiful little chapel. Oh wow.
There's obviously the original pews.
The original pews here as well. And how many congregation members are there?
It's quite a small church. Probably membership, you're probably looking about 10 people. You're looking on a Sunday morning, you're probably looking about 20-something people.
Okay.
So it's quite a small, church. I think it dwindled down quite a lot. I think it's a listed 2 building.
Right. Yeah. Oh wow, interesting. I'll just want to take a shot there of a gallery as well. Wow. Small English chapel here in Chichester. And I've got some citizens of Chichester. How's it going, mate?
Wait, it's on YouTube?
YouTube, mate, yes.
Right, what's your name?
Billy.
Billy?
Yes. I'll show you the channel there, mate.
Yeah,
there you go.
Go.
Nice one.
Oh, that's it. Oh, Willie.
Willie or Billy, yes, yeah.
Got a YouTube and everything.
Yeah, that's right, man. So you guys from Chichester?
Yeah.
What is it like to live here? All right?
Chichester.
Nice one, mate. Yeah. Yeah. All the best, guys. Take it easy. What's that? You don't like it here? Why not?
No, people like they sell drugs.
Oh well, okay.
They sell drugs around here.
Okay, mate. Well, anyway, nice to meet you guys. Yeah. Imagine having so much power that you can create holes in city walls. And that is exactly what one man managed to do. His name was Alderman Silverlock, and he managed to persuade the city council to build a hole in the Roman walls. And what was his motivation? He said it was needed for commercial purposes. Access to his orchard. Hence the name, Orchard Street. So this hole from the 19th century here in Chichester. So Alderman Silverlock from the 19th century. And many people say that in the 19th century Chichester started to be better off. But there was certainly still a lot of poverty in the area. I'm talking specifically about people like Alexander Hay, who wrote a book called The History of Chichester in 1804. And in that he says that Chichester has seen more improvements than virtually any city in the entire kingdom. And he also noted that it's now a very desirable city, one of the most desirable in England. And Obviously, in due course, you had the Market House built in North Street, 1808. You had the Corn Exchange, which we'll visit soon, in East Street, that was built in the 1830s. And you also had later on a cattle market that was built near the end in East Street in 1871. Before I talk more about Chichester in the late 18th and early 19th century, I just want to talk here about the war with France, 1357 to 1453. Chichester's walls were repeatedly repaired under threat of French invasion. It's fair to say that England and France have had a few, shall we say, altercations. And in the late 18th and early 19th century, Britain and France also had more altercations. So many men from Chichester were also drawn into these conflicts. You had, among others, of course, the Revolutionary War with France in 1793. Then you had a brief period of peace with a Treaty of Amiens in 1802. But then the Napoleonic War started, 1803. So, fair to say there's been a few battles. In the late 18th century, the price of bread increased quite a bit. There were some poor harvests in the area, and obviously you had interruptions to international trade and more demands on military. So it was a tough time for the poor. To give you an idea of the increase in the price of bread, I found some data that said in September 1794, wheat on Chichester markets sold at around 42 shillings a quarter. And a year later, it was 80 shillings, so nearly double. And of course, the poor struggled because bread was their staple diet. I've read that the 1814 harvest was particularly bad, and they even had to set up an emergency relief committee here in Chichester to help out. That emergency relief committee, they helped out quite a bit, and they sold around 3,000 loaves of bread for less money at a much discounted price. Yeah, so I think it is maybe a little bit short-sighted to say that Chichester as a whole experienced an economic uplift in the 19th century. There were certainly some people who struggled. All right, I've made it to East Street. I'm back near the Market Cross, and I want to talk to you about the hygiene issues that Chichester have had. In the 1820s and 1830s, the city had a big problem with smallpox. And also, of course, East Street, this was the site, I believe, of the livestock markets. So up to 15,000 animals at one stage. So cows, pigs, oxen, horses. Can you just imagine all the noise and all the rubbish and all the poo that had to be cleaned up? And yes, people struggled with that, especially the latter, I've read. Yes, they could pick up the main bits, but because Chichester also didn't have a sewage system at the time, this was a big hub for diseases. And from a South African perspective, I wonder how many people from Chichester moved to South Africa in the 1820s as part of the British settlers. Certainly, Chichester might not have been a nice place with all that smallpox and hygiene issues at the time, for some at least. So I wonder how many took the leap of faith and took a ship to South Africa. Let me know in the comments if you know. Ah, here we go, the jewel in the crown of East Street, the old Corn Exchange. Now this was built in 1832 and 1833, and it was also subsequently used as a cinema, and today it is a new look. So there you go, progress, eh? Progress at play, capitalism at play. And obviously back in the day in the Corn Exchange, this is where you could buy corn from the farmers. You could bid on various pitchers containing corn, and the highest bidder wins. And I've read that it was builders from Brighton who built this. They started in 1832, but the 6 colonnades here in front only arrived in February 1833 because it was so heavy. More than 3 tons each. But yes, all that blood, sweat and tears, and today it is a new look. And I believe the first ever public film in Chichester was shown here. I've read that apart from a cinema in those days, there were little else in the form of public performances or entertainment. And there were no music halls or sports centres close by. and it's lost its theatre in 1847, and that also meant that annual events such as the Slow Fair became more and more popular. The Slow Fair in 1904, that was a particularly interesting one. Why? Because the citizens of Chichester were at disagreement about its moral value, and many people actually wrote a letter to the Home Office saying that it's an abomination. All these liberal ideas that get spread at the Slow Fair, and children being exposed to foul language and trickery. And the police responded to the Home Office as well, saying that the fair is just a one-day thing in October. So from a resourcing perspective, it wasn't too heavy on the police, and I think that was it. The matter was settled. But yeah, the Slow Fair of 1904, particularly controversial here in Chichester in its history. But check this out. I love that they've kept the old clock there, the Shipham's meat and fish pastes here at the east walls. And also, this is where one of the walks ends. So in Chichester, if you take a walk along the walls, back in the day at least, you could come to Shipham's for some meat and fish pastes. Yes, and we are now at East Gate Square. And there you go, more information about this gate, which stood until 1783, the last of the gates to be demolished. And it also, interestingly, the gatehouse served as Chichester's first jail before its demolition, so maybe that's why it was demolished a little bit later. And here is a statue of John Keats, the famous poet. There you go, looking towards the city centre and cathedral, almost certainly the inspiration for his epic poem The Eve of St. Agnes. On a cold winter in January 1819, the youthful poet John Keats found himself staying with the parents of his friends here in Chichester. So I guess that was one of the reasons that they put this up. He loved Chichester, so Chichester loves him back. Here is St. Pancras Church here in Chichester, and some more information for us here. And it talks about 1642 tensions between the Parliament and King Charles I, which sparked the English Civil War. This area was obliterated as William Waller's parliamentarian forces exchanged cannon fire with the Royalists. A lightweight lever cannon was mounted on top of St. Pancras Church Tower. And for all you trivia buffs again, which of these was a helmet worn during the Civil War? Is it A, B or C? Vote now in the comments. Okay, I have just arrived at the Litten Gardens, where there is a lot of memorials for people who served Britain in wars and who lost their lives in combat, in remembrance of the 323 men of Chichester who gave their lives for their country in the Great War, 1914 to 1918. Presented by the Royal British Legion, Chichester branch. We will remember them. And here's the story of Colonel Wilfred Elstop, if I pronounced that right. The two sides of a sculpture show the same character. On one side in peaceful civilian life, on the other side showing his life in the trenches. The peaceful civilian life, and the life in the trenches. This is incredibly powerful. Lance Corporal Maurice Patton, 7th Royal Sussex. He stands at resting on arms reversed, which is the recognised morning stance, head bowed and muzzle of a rifle on the left foot. Arranged around his feet are his personal effects which his mother received following his death, and comprise of tobacco pouch, silver watch and chain, a Bible and 4 family photographs. And there you go. Fallen heroes from the First World War, the Great War, but of course there was also a Second World War. As is the case with so many other places in the UK, Chichester was very much affected by the Second World War. However, I've read that in September of 1939 there were no attempts to evacuate Chichester. In fact, about 4,800 people from London were sent to Chichester instead. The 4,800 evacuees from London included 2,600 adults and 2,200 children. The adults, they were given overnight accommodation and were fed in community halls, and unaccompanied children would be housed as family members in some private homes, and they would also go to local schools. But the schools had to operate a shift system so that the local kids and the evacuees could attend school at different times. So that would have been quite an adjustment for Chichester for sure. And after the mass evacuation of London, so when the nation did find itself at war, there was a policy of lights out here in Chichester. And if you remember those days, do let me know in the comments. I've read that air wardens and police would have patrolled the streets here, and they would shout to others, lights out. And if you'd fail to do so, you'd get fined. So I guess a little bit like the COVID experience with the masks. Obviously very different circumstances, but I can just imagine the fear and in some cases maybe even the chaos. And I think the fine, if your lights weren't out, I think it was something like £1. Many people were also involved or deployed as fire watchers, so they would spot fires typically from high buildings to see if there's anything of concern, and they would ring an alarm. Philip McDougall wrote a book called The Stories of Chichester, which I consulted before I came here, and there are some wonderful stories about people in there, about their experiences of Chichester, and also of course of a war. And I've read the story of Delia Warrington, who said that her father, he was working at Portfield Cemetery, and there was a policeman that were also obviously patrolling the streets, and he visited them regularly. He was worried that there might be a tiny little bit of light there in the Portfield Cemetery house where her father lived and where Delia also lived. Delia said that at the time she didn't quite believe a policeman who said he was concerned about a little bit of light. She thinks there are two possible reasons that he came there so often. One, he was young and so was she, and obviously no Bumble or Tinder in those days. You needed a little bit more of a direct approach. Or the second reason, her father bottled his own wine. Anyways, stories like that and others in Philip McDougall's book, which I find fascinating. I also know that here in Chichester there was a chief cashier of Barclays Bank. His name was Jack Williams, who joined the Home Guard, and he also fought in the First World War in Turkey, and he was to recall various training sessions, including rifle sessions at Funtington, training at the East Walls Drill Hall and other patrols. And then there's the story of June Hickox, who said that her father Frank was also a member of the Home Guard, and she had to clean some of his buttons of his uniform, and she would get paid 6 pennies for that. And talking about 6 pennies, that immediately makes me think the story of Johnny Eichelaar in Dwarskersbos, thousands of miles away here from Chichester in the UK. And it sounds to me like 6 pennies, that was probably what kids of those years earned. So Johnny Eichelaar had to sell some wood to the Smith family, and June Hickox had to clean her father's buttons here of a Home Guard for 6 pennies. So you can almost write a book, the 6 penny chronicles of kids in those years. And obviously the Second World War also was known for some air raids. There were 3 air raids in Chichester during the Second World War. One in 1942, one in 1943, and one in 1944. The first was in 1942, when several houses near the basin were destroyed. And then there was a second one on the 10th of February 1943 at 4:45 p.m. and 5 people died when a German daylight raider bombed the St. Martin's area. And then the third was when a Liberator bomber of the USA exploded over Velen Avenue on the 11th of May 1944. It crashed into the electric laundry and 3 people died, 38 injured. And obviously with this one, that was not an enemy raid, but it was a notable wartime incident in Chichester involving a military aircraft. Several gravestones here as well. People who lost their lives, who fought for Chichester, fought for the UK, remembered here in the Litten Gardens. Ironically, before the Second World War, there were loads of building projects here in Chichester, and buildings were completed just before the war. So you had the police station in 1935, the county hall in 1936, you had St. Richard's Hospital and the new post office in 1937, and then also a county court in 1938. But of all the buildings here, it was probably the cinema of 1937 that caused the greatest joy for the people of Chichester. And I am just outside the Round Hill Picture Palace. Now this is not the 1937 cinema, I believe this was put up in the 1980s. But I want to talk to you about the 1937 referendum. It was a cinema referendum, and the issue was whether or not to show films on the Sabbath. And obviously those days it would have been a big topic. On the 19th of July 1937, the residents of Chichester decided to settle that issue once and for all. Should films be shown on the Sabbath? About 50% of the electorate voted, and a clear majority, 72.1%, voted yes, films should be shown on the Sabbath, on the Sunday. So maybe a little bit more clear-cut than other referendums of late. And of course life goes on, and Chichester also has a story after the Second World War. So yeah, here's a bus, and I know about the new bus station that was opened in Southgate in 1954. The buses were apparently highly distinctive with light green and cream livery. So let me know if you can remember those. I read some stories of people who say that the 31 bus to Bognor Regis, oh, that was something special. And also employment in the post-war years were relatively high, but I know some people were concerned about the number of industries that came to rise. A certain Francis Steer, he compiled a city guide trying to reassure tourists and visitors that Chichester is still safe to visit. It's not industrial or smoky or anything like that, so do come here. And in 1962 the Chichester Festival Theatre was built in Oaklands Park, which we won't have time to visit today unfortunately, but I hear that that is quite a hot spot nowadays. And pedestrianisation happened in the 1970s, and you also had the Granada Exchange Cinema, which was unfortunately closed down in the 1980s. The Granada with its red seats apparently, and I've read that the seats were so worn down that if you sit down on some and you'd stand up, part of a seat would come up with you. So let me know if you remember those old Granada cinema days. The Granada Exchange Cinema as the dating hotspot in the 1970s and 80s. Right everyone, we're getting to the end of the vlog, but I still want to take you down the Pallants, a group of streets here in Chichester, collectively known as the Pallants. So there are 4 main streets: East Pallant, South Pallant, North Pallant and West Pallant. So a bit like East Street, West Street, South Street and North Street, you also have the Pallant equivalents here in Chichester. But also a lovely area to explore, lots of Georgian architecture and very modern art as well. Very narrow but picturesque streets the Pallants are, with lots of Georgian architecture, and this definitely forms part of Chichester's rich history. It really is a great city to explore if you're into architecture. And here's the Pallant House Gallery, art gallery over here. And right next to it, that is Pallant House, which is arguably the most famous building here in the Pallants. Now, I've read that it is one of the first brick houses that were built in Chichester in the early 18th century, this one here. So, and in fact, it's considered to be one of the top 18th century townhouses in all of England. So that is some statement. And it was built by Henry Peckham in 1712, 1713, who was a wine merchant. So it was completed during the reign of Queen Anne, which was the Stuarts, so actually just preceding the Georgian era. And over each of the windows you've got flowers and other symbols there on the brickwork. So such carvings on bricks are rare and actually quite difficult to execute. So well done on whoever did that. And Pallant House is also known as Dodo House. So you can see the birds here at the gateposts. However, they're supposed to be ostriches, but they've got a rather awkward appearance. The ostriches form part of the crest of the Peckham family, so they were supposed to be ostriches, but maybe they look like dodos. Let me know in the comments what you think. The 18th century residents probably had tea parties in here that were the high society equivalent of today's viral TikTok trends. And just some more examples of other splendid Georgian houses here in the Pallants. And all the flowers outside the houses as well. It's summertime, so England likes to show off its flowers in the baskets. And also here in the Pallants you have a beautiful medieval church, All Saints Chapel. You can see there. I believe this is one of 3 medieval churches that has survived into the 21st century, the others being St. Olaf's, and then there's another one, St. Andrew Ox Market, or St. Andrew in the Ox Market. Many churches simply didn't make it because they were very expensive to upkeep, to maintain. So you only have a few medieval ones, 3 in fact, here in Chichester. On the 8th of June 1846, Chichester got its first train. It was opened by the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. So they opened Chichester's first railway, and this was a route to Brighton via Ford. And of course other trains followed in due course. You had connections to Havant and Portsmouth in 1847, and upon completion of the entire Portsmouth to Brighton line, Victorian Chichester had the luxury of as many as 8 trains a day zipping back and forth. In 1859, the London and South West Railway Company, they opened a rival route which made a connection to London via Havant and Guildford possible. So there you go. The 2 main things that happened in the UK in 1859, right at the top of a pile, is Chichester getting a train to London. Number 2 is of course Charles Darwin, who published The Origin of Species, but hey, the train to London's more important, eh? Alright everyone, I think this is also where I'll end the vlog. I'll be travelling back to Brighton. So what do you think of Chichester, guys? Were Francis Pigou and Daniel Defoe right, or were they talking nonsense? Let me know in the comments. And by the way, if you haven't done it yet, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel. For now, I just want to say again, thanks for watching my videos, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers, take it easy. As a South African in England, this country continues to amaze me. South Africa and England roughly have the same population, but England, in geographic terms, are about the size of a Free State. So of course with the Goths, what they try to do with their architectural styles is they introduce things like lightness and more intricacy.